Got Chinese.
Remember this day, the National Security Advisor just brought you dinner.
Hey, look, those names I sent over, Dante Allen, Simone Martin.
Yeah, you should have a look at this. I mean, it helps that this guy Wellington is like a walking meme.
When was this taken?
About an hour ago.
How does it get from Tapas Bar Spat to National Network News in an hour?
Well, that's the end of the journey, the species jump. Really, we should start here.
What's that?
Well, that's a node, an identity.
What's it do?
Well, that's the tweet with the frame grab and the caption. I mean, that's the meme. All right, so these are the nodes that respond. They're actually mostly automated accounts. They light up red when they retweet messages, which they do sporadically over time so that it looks natural.
What about the green ones?
Yeah, no, those are real people. Those are verified accounts. So like a real person might send a meme to a friend or 2 or 10 or maybe everyone they know. In epidemiology, that's called a replication rate, and every meme has one.
So that's the real people passing it on.
Mm-hmm. Each green node represents 1,000 people. Okay. So that's what it looks like on a national scale.
You seen this?
Yep.
Okay, now look here. That's what happened at Lucasville. I had to fiddle with the time a little bit to make things obvious.
Way more green note.
Twice as many. I mean, it's a bigger story. It's a better meme. But it's the red nodes that really caught my eye. The automated accounts. So far, yeah, I've identified over 75 of them now, also retweeting remarks about the president's chief of staff.
Same accounts for both stories. Is that unusual?
Well, no, not if the memes are being pushed by the same network.
I mean, Yevgeny.
Yeah. I mean, if he was behind Lucasville, I'd say he's got a hand in this one, too.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
Our next subject will be a very important principle, the hologram, which is the basis of reality as Ben perceived it. And as usual, Ben had some interesting diagrams to explain his ideas, and he explained the hologram in terms of 3 pebbles being dropped into a pizza pan filled with water. And you drop these pebbles simultaneously into the water. What happens? Each pebble announces what happens to it. In fact, it's screaming, "Help, I'm drowning in a pizza pan." So it sends out these wavelets that reach every point on the surface of this water. And every pebble does that. So if we take this water now, which resulted in a pattern of wavelets that now clash into one another, all this information about the pebbles, and it's called the interference pattern. In cross-section it would look like that. And if you quick freeze the water and you get a piece of ice like this, which is actually a photograph of all the information about these pebbles. And then you take what is known as coherent light, or light where all the rays are of the same frequency, a laser light, and you shine it through this interference pattern. Lo and behold, you see the 3 pebbles reconstructed 3-dimensionally in space. This is the important part of the hologram, that all the information is contained in this pattern, and every point of this pattern contains that information, because if by mistake you break this piece of ice and you end up with a little sliver of it and you shine the same light through it, you will still get your 3 pebbles. So this method of storing information is the most efficient way that nature has devised. And so Ben was a great believer and observer of the phenomenon of the relationship between the micro level and the macro level. When nature comes up with a method that really works, then it will be repeated on all these different levels, and we see more of that later. This is an actual photograph, if you can see it, of waves interacting with each other, creating this moire pattern of waves. It will actually look something like that. And here, if you shine this coherent light, the 3-dimensional object gets reconstructed. Now, if instead of those 3 pebbles, we substitute 3 individuals, because we, like the pebbles, are constantly sending out information about ourselves in a variety of ways. And all these fields are interacting, creating a hologram, an interference pattern, and you could say that human consciousness is one big hologram of information about humanity as a whole. We are one mind, one consciousness. And of course, the implications of this are stupendous, because if we realize that everything that we do, that we think, affects not only us, but everyone else, and not only everyone else in humanity, but it also goes beyond the boundaries of our planet. And another way of looking at this would be to see these 3 pebbles, or 3 separate individuals who feel themselves so isolated on this physical level. But if these lines here indicate ever-widening consciousness, we notice that on these higher levels, we begin to interact. So these 2 are interacting here, these 2 here, but all 3 are interacting on the next level. And if you visualize humanity being composed of these separate dots and billions of us, then on the highest level, we are all interacting and we are all one. And of course, you can look at it in reverse, that here is human consciousness, all one, and it sort of percolates down or dribbles down into these separate units, and we all think that we are so separate. And as we interact, we entrain each other, As we saw before, there is a principle of resonance and of entrainment or rhythm communication. In other words, a consciousness that has done its homework. This is a teacher, a guru, who has advanced somewhat beyond the others. Then his energy, his consciousness will be more coherent, it will be more harmonious, and like those oscillators that we looked at, it will entrain and pull after itself consciousnesses that are less evolved.
But see, you shouldn't be dependent on anything anybody else says, does, or thinks. If we want to, you know, like I said in the, we were talking in the Future of Mankind DVD, enlightenment is when you are no longer affected by anything another person does, says, or thinks. Does. What somebody else does? Tell me when it is that what another person does in your family has never affected you. You're thrown into complete disarray by what other people are doing around you. You have no center whatsoever. You're totally embroiled in that person's life and them and yours. There's not an ounce or shred of individuality. That is exactly, then don't tell me, if that is your state, then do not tell me why beast is outside the door. Why leviathans exist outside your door. If you have no center, no self, and are completely divorced, living on the periphery of being, then you are a slave, and then the beast will use that weakness. The beast cannot come, it's just like any virus. The virus cannot penetrate what? A healthy...
The immune system.
Right.
Yeah.
It cannot happen. You know, you don't. You don't have to be a Zen Buddhist to know this. The idea is that if you are strong and healthy, and your body politic is immune, psychically, emotionally, nothing can come in. You know, it's like the whole Salem's Lot concept. You have to let it in.
The vampire. Yeah.
You've got to let it in. It's not doing anything to you. And we have let it in. And this is where my message is maybe different from others who are, you know, screaming blue murder at them.
Yeah.
If we could only get rid of them, Michael Moore. If we can get rid of them, if we elect my guys. But wait a minute, didn't the Second World War break out with your guys in power in America?
The Democrats.
The Democrat, and then the Republicans go, no, if we can only get them out and have our guys in, everything will be wonderful.
Sure.
But didn't the First World War break out when your guys were in? You know, so look, work it out. You know, connect some dots. It's all the same problem.
Yeah.
It's all based on the same psychology. It's all based on human beings having no center of themselves, not even knowing what their own needs are. So let me put it again very clearly: the same loss of self that drove Torquemada or Pina or any of these maniacs to go and put burning pins into somebody else's flesh is exactly the same loss of self that you see today when somebody is doing the same thing to a wife or to a husband, you see, to a child or to a workmate, to a family member, or to themselves. Sadism is, first of all, sadism to the self. From there it moves out and becomes sadism to others.
Hey, welcome. Andre Hodge, Infinite Potential Healing, serving the truth with you once more. As always, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey on this really fascinating weekend. That if you're here with part 6 of this series of Our Intuitive Potential theme, if you've been pretty vigilant with me and appreciated that I've actually offered part 5 this weekend, I decided to offer it up front because it's a pretty monumental weekend from my perspective relative to recalibration and putting together a lot of what I've talked about for many, many years now. So I was just joking to myself and contemplating things and stuff like that. And I was feeling like I was being a bit of a Andy Dufresne, right? So if you don't know who Andy Dufresne is, he was a character that Tim Robbins played in Shawshank Redemption, and to many of you guys out there, I've referred to that movie for many various reasons, right? But one of the cool things, and I'm probably not going to worry about getting the clips this time. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll go full clip ninja, because I've been in that pure source clip ninja mode, right, doing a lot of clips. But maybe this movie is one for you to go and observe as a student, sort of thing, right? But there's a really cool section in that movie where Tim Robbins' character is falsely arrested and accused of murder and stuff like that, so he gets jailed and all this sort of stuff. If you go to imdb.com, it's the Internet Movie Database website. I think it's pretty much number one in the movies of all time, right? So it's really profound. It's got Morgan Freeman as well, which is really cool. But there's a cool section, if he's been falsely arrested and stuff, a miscarriage of justice sort of gone on to him and all this sort of stuff, all right? And the era, I don't know, it was 1930s, maybe earlier, that the jail is set at and stuff, and the particular jail that he's arrested and incarcerated in, and it doesn't have a library, okay? And so one of the variables in the movie is he starts writing to Congress or something like that about getting a library. And I think he writes a letter a day or a letter a week or whatever, and he just keeps writing and writing and writing and writing and writing, right? So eventually what happens is there's a shipment of books. They just rock up one day, and the guard tells Andy about it and all this sort of stuff and all that. And long story short, he's asked if he's going to stop writing and all this sort of stuff. But what he actually does is he's like, ooh, I'm going to write 2 letters a day now, right? So it inspires him to go next level, right? So I'm feeling like being a pure source brat Andy Dufresne here and doubling up this weekend with videos. So I might be releasing this on my usual time, right? So if you're coming to this and this is the first time, the first one that you're coming to, I highly recommend going and watching part 5, right? I invested a lot, right? And it's very potent for this particular weekend. I'm employing the US election as a teaching here, right? And as I said in that video, I'm crossing my streams of actually engaging in the narrative sort of stuff, right? But I feel because it's such an event that, different regions of the world, say the US, they're in it and affected by it pretty substantially and all that. But the rest of the world, it's more of a subtle thing. And I was able to go to the concept I offered in Amplify the Echoes Part 6, which was about the Chaos 19 and the prefrontal cortex effect, alright? And I might be showing the image that I offered relative to the Itzhak Bentov clip that I employed in Part 5, right? But I've got another clip relative to Itzhak that I might employ here, alright, relative to that. So that concept I offered in Amplify the Echoes Part 6, potentially 2.5 years ago now, it's crazy, I feel is a metaphor of what was going on with the Chaos 19, is a variable that's affecting us now. And that's why I was referring to the rest of the world. It might be a variable you're not even aware of. And in that last release, I referred to the recalibration variables where 98% of stuff may not be ours, particularly if we're very proactive on healing and stuff like that. So from my perspective and what I was sensing and stuff, right, that this variable, because of the intensity of the craziness that's sort of going on and the extreme nature of the uncertainty sort of offered, I felt it was a very potent time to bring many of the ingredients that I'm about and I've experienced and stuff that maybe you guys haven't, particularly say the trading and currency trading and being in IT engineering, the sales sort of metaphor of seeing that the masterful play that's unfolding, it's all sort of, you might feel it's organic and it's just like the good guys coming through sort of thing, and everything's going to be good and better and all this stuff. And what I offered relative to my contrarian view sort of concept, again, relative to trading in that last release, I'll do a bit of I'll give you the images in a sec and get into it a little bit, but I'm not going to get into it as much detail as I did in that last release. To me, what I was saying is that the trend is very overextended, and it's humanity is pretty much very energetically overextended, and the system is very masterful of appreciating how we and our mechanics work and stuff and how we feel. And so from my perspective, there's going to be relief, but there's a bit of a gap, and keep an eye on things. And as I offered in the last video, the people's champions are sort of being formulated and offered to the public to garner a following and all this sort of stuff, and many of the things that are being said and the players, it's just very exquisite at the moment. Like, to me, my BS meter has gone off the charts a bit, right? And in that last video, I said many months ago, 3 months at least, I think, the trader in me, relative to the contrarian view, was sensing a trend change, right? And so what I'm offering is all of these sort of concepts and more, what's been going on in the world for the last 50 years, all right? I offered an image that I'll get into that, ideally you've gone through that release and you see how quite simple and elegant all the big scale variables that I brought together, and how we've just never been offered that, right? So I made the comment a while ago, just appreciate how many billions, maybe even more, that have been invested into the spiritual alternate community over the decades, all right? How much has been invested in sessions? I know I help generate millions, all right, for people, all right? That just, when you see that, I'm really hoping to inspire you to question a lot, right? Because to me, we have to really be tough on a lot of things out there, and are they part of the apparatus that have derailed us, right? And the unfortunate thing is a lot is out there from my perspective, right? But we're still so epic and relentless to be able to get here now, right? So again, I'm just grateful for you to allow me to be a part of your journey, and I really hope this will be a very potent release, all right, for you. And as I said, I really recommend just going back to part 5 and investing quite a bit of time in it and in this particular weekend, because it's a very rich one for really measuring yourself in the moment sort of thing. Like, truth isn't known when things are good, truth are known when things are bad. The instability and craziness going on, just the extreme sort of ridiculousness of sort of uncertainties that I've seen in the media and stuff like that. I've talked down and stepped back a bit and all this sort of stuff, but I'm also playing because I'm here. I've gone Eddie to frame, doubling up on this weekend, So I'm aiming to just probably offer this in the normal time and give you guys the content to explore it or not. Those that are really vigilant with my stuff and have invested in my material over this last 6 months, particularly since I've done the version 3 of my sovereignty declaration and stuff, I feel you guys will have an edge, and this will help really gel a lot of those concepts that I've sort of offered in this little bit of an intro, but I'll get into more. And there's a few things that I didn't get into in that last video, and one was the Discordianism, and I was getting into the Discordianism, I think, was in that part 6 of my echoes as well. I've got a bit of bring that forward because there's a lot of variables to, allow the big spell to unfold, all right? Another one that I didn't touch on in that last one was, in my opinion, the cultural conditioning and stuff, and setting us up for failure, right? Because what I was going to offer, the main event, is this really decent Michael Dzarian clip from a lecture 2006, I think, and it gets into sort of how the society reacts to sort of things and how much is really set up for that culturally conditioned sort of reaction to allow people to fall into, right? So one of the big things he talks about in this is about the big daddy, the Adamus concept. So then you can see how the People's Champions are set up for that, right? And it's just, like I said, it's just a real exquisite opportunity to really, in the coalface of it, really test yourself and see how you feel in it. Because I brought back and employed my trader mechanics of actually having to choose an investment in the uncertainty, right? So in that last one, I actually offered my perspective of what's I feel is going to unfold. I could be totally wrong, all right? I could be, but I think like when you see that, how obvious it is, and ideally when you've watched that and the way I see things playing out, then all the uncertainty sort of sheds off. You can see how insane some of the concepts and fears are, right? Because there's a lot of fear for sure. You know, we're going into the unknown, and the unknown breeds a lot of uncertainty. And I might be offering now that emotional mastery image that I offered in the last one, relative to, you know, when there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, the discernment goes down, and we may accept a lot of variables that are corrupt, right, to pollute our perception mechanics. So we find it very hard to navigate, and you know, that can affect us. They can be weaponized and have a lot of energy in them that derail us and stuff. But then there's also this contraction of retreating back to a box, right? You know, there's an idealist view about how things should go, and then there's reality. You know, a lot of us that have been shattered and traumatized, we actually break out of that and go into the unknown, and that's been the catalyst for us to get to where we are now, right? Get into healing and all that sort of stuff. The vast majority, it's like a corralling, like a sheepdog barking and retreating into the familiar. And that's the reality of a lot of things. People don't tend to go into the unknown in uncertain times. They retreat back to the comfort and familiar, all right? And when you appreciate that, that's what I'm getting into, how I'm just in awe of how masterful all this stuff is playing out. I've got a lot of respect for it. But I also feel like the ultimate outcome is, and I was thinking about this the other day, I haven't referred to it, but there's this movie series that maybe you watched, maybe you haven't, called The Maze Runner. I think it was 10 years ago and stuff. And that scenario was like, you know, a maze, right, that's created to breed really exceptional beings that get through it. You know, it's an ultimate in the moment test. It's a rite of passage sort of thing, and they might be awesome movies to revisit sort of thing. But I was thinking, you know, a lot of our journeys are metaphoric maze running sort of things to get here. So I'm sure I referred to the many unique, the outcome common. Each of us have a very unique ingredients in our menu that brought us to be here and able to appreciate concepts like this. But the outcome is common. We're all sort of hunting and on a quest to know the truth and access our intuitive, infinite potential, right? So I really thank you for being here and all you've had to endure. But, you know, you might be going through a lot. You might be overextended. You might be like gone through a marathon and just not up for it anymore. But I feel there's going to be a lot of relief, but we've just got to be vigilant of what's behind that relief, right? So I'm going to get into it now, all right? So I'm just going to bring up the spiritual no man's land concept, all right? I introduced this concept in our intuitive potential part 4, and it's basically this box, all right? So the 3D 5 cents, the red box and the green, all right? So from my perspective, it's taken a lot, you know, gone through a lot of interactions and epic beings with their contribution, right, to really formulate this appreciation that ultimately, as I've said in a past couple of releases, if we're inferior to everything, none of this would be needed. So the outcome must be that we must be superior for all this stuff to be needed to suppress us. Thus, our intuitive potential theme is basically, if this is the whole thing, that all the apparatus is being conceived to prevent it, then our intuitive potential is the way to go, right? So yeah, this is basically the spiritual no man's land, and there's a lot in it, right, to actually derail us, and that's why it's been so challenging, right? So I'm just going to go to another image quick. This is the awareness journey that I've shared many times, right? And that's a bit going into the unknown, seeking out that intuitive potential and our infinite potential and stuff. And from my journey and many out there, this has come about via a lot of the negative outcomes that don't add up. That the ultimate result is we have to see what it is and what is going on. And my journey of discovery relative to the Asha material and all the other things that I've gone through, and you know, the missions and all the ingredients relative to emotional mastery and all this sort of stuff, right? It's all been an ally to get to this moment now of putting it all together right in the cold face of this really epic event, right? So I'll just move on. I also shared this from the last video, and this I offered in Influences Part 4 way back earlier in the year, right? This is just another way of expressing some of the variables in the spiritual no man's land that we've been up against, and it's been formidable, guys. We've never been told this, we've never been offered it, and this is like an ingredient of discerning a lot in the community of how much we've been set up for failure, right? We ultimately have to appreciate that, right? But we've still overcome it to be here now, okay? So I'm just going to move on. This is my Master the Moment image, alright? And I didn't offer this in the last one, but what I offered was basically a bit of a test, an intuitive test in the last video. It's about assessing yourself at this point, right? In it. If you've watched the last video then and you've gone through it, I offered in that one, if you were brutally honest about yourself, where you were, but then you go through the video, you may have had a lot of variables that you were feeling off, you weren't feeling confident, the uncertainty is epic and all this sort of stuff. It's very like Cat 5 level, perfect storm of all these things right now. That's why it's such a rich time for me to do what I do in it, right? Which is, like I said, crossing the streams Ghostbuster wires, but the opportunity to employ it in the moment, just like what we do in the GSF sort of thing. If you listen to part 35, I'll be doing a future release which has the whole pure source healing sort of thing in the future, but I'm suggesting this weekend is an incredible, rich time to really accelerate your awareness and your development in it, right? So if you see this one, this is looking at the past and it can limit you. Worrying about the future can also limit you. But if you're in the moment in self-mastery, the emotional mastery, all this sort of stuff, appreciating that, like I said, all this stuff wouldn't be needed if we were inferior, right? So ideally you've gone back to the past release. Our Intuitive Potential Part 5, Navigating and Overcoming the Spiritual No Man's Land. If you've done that, I hope you've seen the growth, right, that I offered relative to calibrating where you were versus me offering my perspectives of what's going to happen, right? And then you're employing that as an overlay, right, to then recalibrate yourself to and identify the components that were misaligned and all this sort of stuff, right? Like I said, it's just a really extreme time that's amplifying everything, but it's really showing us our truth where we are. But then if that's the truth, then we can work with it. So that's where the brutal honesty is required, okay? Because there's nothing wrong with making a mistake or anything like that. from my perspective, I'd rather try and fail than not try and be corralled to inaction, right? When you reassess, then you can see the variance of where you are versus where your potential is, and step into that growth, okay? So I'm just going to move on. So this is the contrarian view, right? One of the main components of the last one I offered was relative to this, and the ups and downs of our journey, and in the moments of the extremes, the way the majority of humanity, say the herd in this instance, it's labeled, the red tend to go the wrong direction at the wrong time, right? But the trader senses things based on the proper mechanics of in the moment, appreciating all the variables for what they are, right? Rather than reacting to things and feeling the fear of the unknown dominating you, right? Just realize uncertainty is a variable. It's constant in life. And just because things are uncertain and unfamiliar doesn't mean you can't navigate them, right? Then it becomes more of a case of really relying on our nature, right? Relying on our mechanics, relying on our employing things to actually execute when the tests are on, right? And we're in a mega exam mode, so it's just a really rich time for all this. So what I was offering relative to the trading and stuff, right? This is a very basic view of it, right? I got into a bit more complexity in the other one, right? And there's a variable I didn't offer in the last one, right? So I'll get into that now, okay? But just appreciate what I was offering is the energy for trends. You know, to go down, it requires a lot of energy to maintain that trend. It's unsustainable. And inauthenticity, lies, falsehoods and stuff, from my perspective, are enormously life force costly. They require a lot of resources to maintain. You know, you look at the world, the media, distortion, you have to cover a lot of lies and all this sort of stuff, suppress the truth and that, where truth and authenticity are, you know, you don't have to remember the truth. It is just a part of who you are. And so the energy invested into maintaining your truth is very efficient, right? So we've just been through a pretty big negative trend for many years, and I was combining all the presidencies and all this sort of stuff, right? What's gone on. And but I want to just do a bit of a tangent that I didn't offer in the last one, and this is a pretty cool one, because doing this test that I offered in the last release, okay, the metaphor of that is called a paper trade. So it's a, you know, it's not an actual execution of the mechanics of a trade. It's a theory of a trade, right? The difference between a theory trade and an actual trade, they're called paper trades and real trades. A paper trade is a virtual trade, whereas a real trade is actually putting money in the game, right? And they're totally two different mechanics, right? Because when you've got something at risk, your life force, money is encapsulated life force tech, right? Literally got skin in the game. When you've got risk and you can lose, the intensity of the fears and all that are just off the charts compared to a paper trade, right? Because I'm going to employ that in a way. So I'm just going to bring up the image relative to the book that I talk about, the trading book, and I'll just move to the next image. This is the book I offered in the last one that was a really cool ally in my trading days, right? So I'm just going to open to the page that I showed relative to the chart, alright? So this is the image I employed, alright? And I'll have it next to me. But the contrarian view was very elegant, ups and downs, right? Real life, it isn't that way. You can see sort of there's a bit of up and down at the top, but then there's this fall through the floor sort of thing. So the upper section is called a channel. But this is a metaphor I offered in the last video about how the world has gone since 2012, 2016, 2020, right, with the US elections. And there's a lot of craziness that went around 2020, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But the difference between a money trade and a theory paper trade is that you don't lose, right, money. But when you've got money in the game, it's a huge escalation of the intensity of things, right? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is relative to, say, sessions as well, right? And healing and all that. And I'm just going to show you an image that I haven't shown for a while, right? Talking about this stuff is just a good opportunity of me talking about my healing mechanics as well, and it's not about getting sessions, it's just the way I roll, right? Because I appreciate all this and the energy and the intensity and the escalation of sort of variables that when you appreciate money as a variable of this reality, right? And it is equated to our life force effort and stuff. There's a risk, right? But say in sessions and stuff like that, you guys that are healers out there that are coming through and developing and stuff, this is important to know, right? And it comes down to your worth and self-worth and all this sort of stuff, right? And the thing with humanity is most of humanity, they might say they're not governed by money, but money from my perspective is a fabric of our energy, right? But it's so consistent, a bit like the pure source corruption, right? It's such a natural aspect of our existence, we don't even know it's there. So it has an effect, right? And this is what I've appreciated over the years is I love doing sessions and healings and stuff, and I'm not governed by the money and I'm not governed by the outcome, but I feel that the effect on a session and the success going forward for an individual, when they're invested in it, so they're investing money, it has a whole different level of an effect, okay? And so what I also appreciate is that, say, when people do invest, there's a defensive aspect of that real investment. It actually has an effect. So this is all three metaphors of an individual, right? Three layers of someone, say, needing healing and that, and then someone that you engage in doing healing that's being targeted, but then someone that does, say, engage you and then invests in you. So this is all the reason why I just have myself set up and I'm passive waiting for people to come through, right? And the way you get to me is you actually pay up front and you invest, right? So I leave that rite of passage for people to go through themselves. It's like a trade, right? It's a trading for your potential, being invested into me and all this sort of stuff, and anyone out there, okay? Because what I feel is that once the engagement happens, then the defense is there of the outcome of the session, okay? I don't want to get into this too much, but I'm just offering you why I roll the way I roll, because I've worked all this stuff out, and when I compromise myself, there's consequence, all right? So this video and our intuitive potential does all have a healing component in it, right? And there's a lot of defeat the healer out there. There's a lot of people that, you know, they're on the forefront of everything, but things just don't gel and stuff like that. There's a lot of fears in people of the uncertainty and all this sort of stuff, all right? And from my perspective, if you don't need healing and you're getting through this, I commend you. But me, like I'm literally healing many hours of each day, right? It's been brutal, and you know, I'll get into another image in a sec, right? But I just want to offer this mechanics to help you realize the way I roll, and say for myself, committing to the healer level that I'm operating at. You know, I'm very technical in my mechanics, and I'm very deliberate in everything I do, and I've had to let go a lot to be able to get to this level, and I don't really socialize and interact and stuff, and we're coming to the end of a really epic cycle and stuff, and I'll offer a lot of things will be easy to perceive, just that, like I said, the prefrontal cortex and the Itzhak Bentov layers in the multi-D relative to the Chaos 19 and now this election, they've all been ingredients to really cloud a lot of perceptions And I feel that there'll be a lot of perception relief on the other side, and I'm feeling it already and stuff, but just appreciate all this, alright? We've all been through a lot. There's all sorts of stuff going on, like the spiritual no man's land and stuff, right? But well done you, alright? So I hope this mechanics helps you if you're gonna step into your practitioner level at some point, right? Just remember all this. You can trial it and see what happens, but it comes down to your worth, alright? How precious are you? That might be a variable to put into that equation of the personal mechanics of discerning yourself and stuff that I offered from part 5, right? I'll just tangent a little bit here now with this image, bringing up that, right? Because this is what it's all about. This works from the individual to the collective to bigger scales and stuff, right? Getting to that crossover. And as I said in the last video, you might want to draw a bit of this image and on it, right? Put where you think you are, right? But I would just offer, like I said, the Chaos 19 in this election on the multi-dimensional clouding of everyone where they're at, not realizing you're being affected and needing to recalibrate and shed all the influences. You know, potentially 2% is only you, 98% isn't. Then it becomes, what are the ingredients of that 98%, right? So I feel there'll be a lot of perception relief after all this, right? And maybe you think you're down there, but you're actually up there. And a lot down there isn't going to make sense, but a lot down there are going to see you and get their reflection and think that you're wrong and project all their stuff on you and all that. And you might be still relying on external validation and stuff and not realizing that you've had your crossover and you're just so peerless, especially from my perspective. If you've invested in my content over this last 6 months and done the sovereignty declaration and sessions and engage your own healer and stuff like that, the whole spiritual no man's land from my perspective is all to prevent this and engaging our intuitive potential to break free of all this stuff, right? And instead of using it as our resistance, right, of what we're up against ourselves, the system and all that, it'll become our launch, our foundation to launch from, right? So I'm just going to go back to the control and view expansion, right? So going back to the overview and then the trader mechanics. This is where it's been from my perspective. And as I said, I offered a lot more detail in the last release, alright? So go explore that, alright? And this is where the uncertainty has been, right? Because it was like, instead of rebounding, we went through the floor. It like changed the trend. And the extreme of the uncertainty on humanity and the emotional instability and the inflation and trying to chart your course and all that, and just the insanity going on. You can see a lot of it being shed, alright? And the trend has already sort of changed. We've just got some indicators of the trend change, but it hasn't really changed. And you know, this US election has a potential, from my perspective, it's going to be a big trend change, alright? So I'm just going to move on. So this is my appreciation of it all, right? So the way I felt is what I said about the energy invested to maintain a trend is very demanding, that it gets more costly towards the end of the trend, and that's where the trader flips, right? Sees it and senses it. But what I was offering is, to me, it felt like there was going to be a relief, but it wasn't going to be the full return. And if you go into actually trend charting, this is like, it's a Fibonacci sort of level. Like this is a 0.618 return, right? So this is a very common sort of trend mechanics. Like the energy to go from up the top to below is the same as getting that relief, right? It would need more energy to continue, right? But what I was offering is, this is relative to the metaphor of humanity being overextended and just being grateful for any benefit, right? Like the foot has been on the neck for so long. Getting any improvement, it's going to be very disarming. And what I was saying in the last video, to me, my BS meter sort of sense was like, there's going to be sort of BS going on, that people aren't going to be on the ball, all right? So that's where I was like, a lot of people are like, oh, this is all going to be a relief, change, and everything's going to be better. I was like, doom. It's going to be a continuance of it. It's just all going to the next level. Like I said, the bigger pattern recognition, the menu is unique, the outcome is common. And I referred to some of the political sort of stuff, right, over bigger scales, all right? And I'll just get into that a bit now, quick. Right? So this is a very important image that I put together, right? And I don't think anyone has ever come near this. And then this is all that and what went on there that put all these ingredients over the many years. They're all tests, right? From my perspective, it's all about our intuitive threat, okay? And then there was this dude overseeing it, all right? And then at this layer, this is all the US presidents, all right? So you think that one guy is a victim of all these people out there working against him, right? Going against the system and all this sort of stuff, and all the polarity created against them and stuff. My intuitive BS meter has gone off the charts in the last couple of weeks. No, there was a big interview last weekend, and to me it was just too good to be true, right? It was too masterful in setting us all up to disarm us, okay? Because like I said, we're overextended, okay? And wanting relief. And seeing what we want to see, not what we need to see, okay? Because I don't think anyone out there is sort of offering all this stuff, right? And this is me going back all the years of stuff I was involved in, and that's why I'm calling out the Akasha Bullshita records, because this is, when you look at it, it shouldn't be that hard, right? Why don't we know this, okay? And that's where I'm sort of offering, and that this is where I'll segue into the review of the Echoes 14, all right? Is we have to accept that so much is in alignment with this, all right? We've lost so much time. We lost 10 years with the Akasha Bullshita sort of thing. I discovered it in 2010 with Miles Johnson and Chris Thomas, all right? That's the first time I heard of it. And I've had the privilege of operating with some pretty aware beings, going back to my meditation leader and stuff like that. So I was already open to the intuitive potential and stuff. But this is where us veterans were set up, had it tougher because we just didn't have any opposition and stuff. And the masterful nature of all this, from my perspective, it was a lot of the community have a lot to answer for, because a lot of the concepts aren't on our side. A lot of the concepts, from my perspective, were setting us up for one world order, right? And what I might show you is the pure source image, just quick. To me, so much was setting us up to, linking us up to that, right? And not to the purity of what's gone on in the multiverse level to get to now, right? So we lost a lot of time, right? So much in the community, from my perspective, has so much to answer for. Like I said, how many billions have been invested into the journeys of people, and what's the return of investment on that, right? How many aren't here anymore? How many have lost years, decades? How many have been derailed and sabotaged, all right? Because of the spiritual no man's land and the predators that have been amongst us, all right? we get the right to answer ask these questions of everyone in the community, right? Because that's where I go back to that image in a sec, and I'll get there in a sec. But experience is the key to wisdom, right? And we're here now, right, on this weekend, with all this going on, up against the odds still, right? But as I offered in GSF 35 and the future one, basically I went to him and did a healing to clear all that, right? So the mechanics are sort of set up. The individual level still has to be done, right? I'll just move on. This is one of my images relative to the Akasha Bullshit, right? This is the moon and all that sort of stuff. I've got videos all about this, right? Last November I offered a moon video, right? What that's been about. But this is what I'm suggesting is going back when I show you the Vax image again, right? I'm probably going to offer a Michael Desarian clip of a bit of a segment from the bigger thing I'm going to offer at the end relative to him. That he brings up Michael Moore, right? That this is getting back 20 years ago now. I'm not sure if you guys are across Michael Moore, but Michael Desarian was observing this guy that's sort of the people's champion in the community, and he was talking about his assessment about Bush going to war in Iraq and stuff like that. And the same metaphor is, when I go back to that big overview 50-year image that I showed just before, the Akasha Bullshit, why didn't you tell us this? Right? Why don't we know this? Why didn't we know this 10 years ago of what was going on? Right? It's the same sort of, you listen to Michael Desarian in this clip, right? It's the same thing with where I'm at with what I'm involved with and saying here, okay? So just enjoy the clip and I'll be on the other side.
And I showed Michael Moore's picture earlier because, you see, he is a great exemplar, and there's plenty of them, of this faux opposition. The game is like this. If you don't create your own rival, you might have to come up against one that really does mean business. You don't want that. You don't want the real fighters. You don't want those who are going to come and try and take down your system, of which there's been a few people like that in history. So you invent and fund and pay and clothe your own guy. Case in point, Michael Moore was interviewed during the summer of 2004 and asked repeatedly by Charlie Rose what the real reasons, this is after Fahrenheit 9/11, it's all done and, you know, millions of dollars have been thrown around. What was the real reasons for Bush's alarming aggressive tactics and why so many liberties and rights were being flagrantly disregarded? Moore answered back in the same manner every time he was asked the same question, and I believe he was asked about half a dozen times. And his answer was, I don't know. Immediately, I knew that he works for them. You don't know? Excuse me, you've just thrown millions of dollars around. You've given a 70% fact because we are angry. So we'll follow this guy thinking he's got a piece of the truth. And just like they show you in The Meaning of Life, Monty Python, come with me, come. The waiter is leading, remember? And they end up nowhere. Aren't they the false gurus? Come. I'm going to show you where I live. I got a mystery I'm going to show you. Leads them through all the streets and up and down and all around. And then what? To an empty bloody field. I don't know. Well, that is not good enough. For you to be on primetime television with all of that time? Guess what? Alex Jones knows. Anthony Hilder could find out. Jordan Maxwell managed it. The people of America are managing it, but you can't find out? You have nothing to say? Meaning you know the problem, but you don't know what it is? Brilliant. I say to hell with that. It's in our face what is wrong. What is wrong is it's a one-party system. And this dialectic, we need to become very familiar with how it's worked, because behind the scenes it's just one guy.
Interesting, hey? Alright. So you might feel I've got a vested interest in going after specific things and stuff like that. I'm more about concepts and the whole community as a whole, alright? Because a lot of people feel quite inferior to the scales of things and the masterful nature of things going on and individuals and stuff, and feel very insecure and insignificant compared to them. But I'm here to inspire you to engage your intuitive potential, infinite potential. And it's more about where do those limits get imposed on us that we think we have to accommodate that stuff. Being able to question everything of why we are in the situation we are in and how we got there. Like I said, how many billions have been invested into the spiritual alternate path that, from my perspective, we're in a worse situation, right? But again, like I offered the contrarian view sort of thing, there's potential for relief and a trend change, and I could be wrong, right? But I would just suggest, like I offered in part 5, I'll leave it there, alright? But I just want to move on, alright? But yeah, just appreciate all this, alright? Feel you can have a voice, have a variable in you to question everything, alright? When maybe you didn't, okay? So just bringing this one back to the fore, alright? What I'm offering is, why don't we know this, alright? You know, there's a lot of ingredients, 15 years for me, that's gone through to be able to articulate this way, alright? And I got into this in a lot of detail in part 5, so I recommend going through there. There was the whole 2012 thing. That was the Obama second term, where it was very metaphoric to now. There's just some ingredients now that are a bit different, alright? There was all these things adding up for this, okay? And then there was the 2020 sort of stuff that went on, right, with the elections and stuff. And what I want to do is just offer, from my perspective, this is a metaphor for the Discordianism, right, that I'll get into in a little while after I get across the bigger things that I said relative to Echoes 14, right? But for me, the 2020 thing, there's another layer here, right, that people aren't looking at. All the election integrity sort of stuff, right, I think that's all just a Discordian layer to distract people. And this is where going into the unknown of pattern recognition, me offering a thing that is pretty out there that might blow your mind, right? Because I feel with all this, right, this has been a 50-year plan with all these red and blue beings and stuff. I feel what went on in 2020 was an actual test run of the controlling people, right? So when you see that someone that you don't think should be in a leadership role that gets 80 million more things, right? The machines, alright? You know, the voting irregularities and stuff, and creating openings for uncertainty and all this sort of stuff. To me, a variable no one's even considered is all the people that have gotten this. Maybe a lot of them aren't in alignment with the colours, alright? But maybe a program was executed for them to not be in free will to make choices, that they actually executed what happened. And all the chaos that's going on is to distract us from that. Does that make sense? I hope that's not too vague. It was a test run of all this control, right? So you guys, some of you out there might have actually seen Westworld, right? There was some, it's fascinating they didn't fund the 5th season, right? Because season 3 and particularly 4 was all about that sort of control, alright? So that might be a good series to rewatch, right? I hope that, I'm going to have to be deliberately vague on this because it's pretty monumental call that I'm making, right? But I feel that that's what went on. And it's about what people are willing to accept as possibilities rather than the what is, right? And this is why the multi-dimensional method to the 3D madness, not being governed by the 3D, because a lot might say, oh, that's not possible. You don't know what is possible. And I'm going to get into the cultural conditioning and the setup for failure in a bit, right, as well, after the Discordianism. Right? But I'm going to segue into that Echoes 14 part now. Right? So in Echoes 14, I went into my Ghostbusters cross the stream sort of thing of getting into the political stuff again. And from the outside, and the green indicates the resources, life force to be able to fuel all this, because invaders need nourishment from external, where us organic to pure source, we're self-sustaining and stuff. So the invaders need energetic resources to maintain their status, alright? So the perception from the outside, from what I was offering, is there's different colors, and potentially they're aligned to specific species, right? But from what I appreciated was the sides were united relative to different species potentially in them, right? But because the resource was there, it was harmonious, right? So what, I'll just get into the next one, relative to a bit more relevant to now, alright? As you can see, the bar graph down the bottom is the reduction of the resources to maintain things, alright? My appreciation long ago was it was going to become dog eat dog, because they'll turn on each other sort of thing, right? To maintain their existence, because they're reliant on a reduction in nourishment to maintain themselves, right? So what I felt was, and I use some examples about, say, Mitt Romney going against Trump sort of thing, you know, the parties were splitting, right? But to me, the splits were relative to the alignment of the species, right? Of the soul level of what's going on, because the dwindling resources is the fracascaria is going on, right? So there was a falling out, and the minority and the bigger parties were the vulnerable ones that were probably turning on each other and stuff, until, from my perspective, all the species are realigned, right? That's why the colors don't add up, but it's the soul level of things, right? Or who they're associated with, who's they're in alignment with, and all that. So it was more the species realigned, which I'm going to get into the bigger scales next, alright? Relative to the old community and earth and the pure source in between, alright? Relative to, say, how the government is working with the old spiritual variables in as infiltrators into it all, right? In partnership on both sides, alright? So this one has 3 levels, right? The top is the government, the bottom is the infiltrators in the old spiritual community, and the middle one is Earth, with, say, the pure source trying to work out what the frack is going on. And this one has the large amount of life force abundance that they're all harvesting off Earth and us and all that to maintain themselves. So there's harmony from the frackers, alright? And all the different parties and species and all that sort of stuff, right? So I'm just going to move to the next one. So like I offered in the second one of the overall party sort of thing, not all the colours are all one colour. They're all made up of a mismatch of different species, but there's probably minority species in a majority of another species sort of thing, alright? The reason I could bring Earth in is, what I know with some of the people that I deal with is when they go to different regions of the world, some people get relief in other regions, and then they go to different regions, and then they get attacked, or they get relief. And it was relevant to the influences over them. If some people had, say, reptilians messing with them, when they went on reptilian territory, they were targeted, but when they went to another species, then they got relief sort of thing. So you go on holidays, you feel better and sort of stuff. That stuff was going on to help identify this pattern, right? But this one is relating to the dwindling of life force resources. So there's a fracturing of all the unity in these species, alright? So the different factions were starting to separate, and that's where there was a lot of infighting in the community and aligning with teaching and congealing with like attracts like sort of thing, all right? And then we're in the middle, still not knowing what the F is going on, still targeted and all that, but there's a shift going on sort of thing, and this is where we've been, all right? And may still be, all right? The falsehood is becoming very obvious sort of thing, and we're seeing them for what they are. So I'm just going to move on. So this is the third one with a lot less resources, all right? And so this is sort of where we're at now, all right? You know, we've done the big missions and freed up a lot of stuff, got the mechanics right. And so the like attracts like, all right? There's still unity with a lot of the negative and that all going at us, but like I said, if we were inferior, none of all the influences would be needed, all right? So ultimately, we're the ultimate threat, all right? And a lot in the community, you know, realigning, say green is pure source and stuff, and all the different species, and then the negatives are going at each other for the dwindling resources, and we're flourishing, right? And I would offer there's a lot of potential for this on the other side of this election, right? In that relief and all this sort of stuff. But if you want to really get into what I offered in this in a lot of depth, go and explore Amplify the Echoes Part 14. It was a pretty epic teaching on all this, because a lot of ingredients were revealed to really put all this together, and I'm appreciative of a lot of people for being variables in that, right? They know who they are. So I'm just going to move back to what I was doing on that bigger 50-year overview, right? So all of this, what I'm wanting to get to is we can't give benefit of doubt to a lot in the community, all right? And if you went into Echoes 14, we got the connection between government and the old spiritual influence community and stuff. We worked that out in April and stuff, right? Through some missions and discerning everything and that. But again, what I'm just wanting to offer is to really cement why we haven't had this, all right? Isn't it ridiculous? This is not hard, all right? Imagine if we had this 10 years ago, all right? Yeah, there's all the thing that, yeah, maybe we wouldn't have handled it and all that sort of stuff. Well, I'd rather have it and not be able to handle it, to then refer to it, than not have it at all, all right? To cultivate our naivety and benefit from us, to keep us treading water while all this shit gets unfolded. And this gets back to the spiritual no man's land, and I'll just show you that image again. This is why we have to accept it. This is why it's been so tough in our awareness journey. Everything has been against us from working that out, if you appreciate that, right? It hasn't been easy. A lot has suffered a lot. A lot of money has been wasted, consumed, and harvested from people, and energy and time, right? So I'll just move on. I'll just bring this in quick again as a reference. It has been crazy. You know, we have every right to feel inferior and all this sort of stuff, but like I said, if we were inferior, why is all this stuff needed? We have to accept our superiority, alright? Because what happens with that foundation of self-acceptance, alright? So this is the self-acceptance thing, alright? We have been up against a lot, and potentially our own mechanics have been our own worst enemy at times, alright? It hasn't been easy, okay? But I would offer there's so much potential on our side, alright? And maybe you're a lot better than what you think, right? But it's not about, you know, being complacent. It's about the self-acceptance. What happens if we do accept ourselves for how masterful and magnificent we are, and then where do we go from there, all right? Who may need us to be that, all right? What may need us to be that may be the beacon for others to find us and all this sort of stuff, right? So I'm just going to move on. So isn't it all interesting, right? How epic all this has been. Imagine how terrified of us they are, alright? So what I want to do is get into another main component that will lead into the Big Michael Desiring clip, right? So what I'm going to do is get into the Discordianism component now, right? Because the question I had, why didn't we know this? This is so simple and elegant, right? And I would offer it's many variables by design, all right, to not see this. Because truth is the ultimate threat, you know. Context is all, right? Once you have the context, you can know how to navigate. And one thing I appreciate about people, no matter where they are, right? You might have a different degree of appreciation of intelligence and stuff, and there's a lot of contemptuous projection on humanity for, say, how dumb they are. Well, I would offer a lot of it's been about cultural conditioning to be malleable to all this, plus all the nutrition suffocation sort of thing that I say about setting up the body to be a failure, to not be a foundation and a launch pad for our conscious potential in all this, right? These are all very potent ingredients in the recipe for setting us up for failure, right? So I'm very compassionate for humanity, but we still have choice in it, all right? And like I say in my sovereignty declaration about pure source diamonds, right? Potentially a lot of the pressures are the catalyst for bringing out the diamond in us, right? And many out there that have yet to come into their awareness. Maybe they've been waiting for us to accept ourselves and forge this path, right? I'm pretty sure I shared that Itzhak Bentov clip at the front, all right? The highly aware forge the way. So I'm going to get into the bit of the cultural conditioning and how that has been set up to be compounded by the Discordianism, right? So I think I'm going to include a Bruce Lipton clip about the first 7 years of learning and stuff, right? And then what I'm going to offer is the Discordian clip that I offered back in Echoes 12 about Chaos 19, alright? And then I'm going to offer some pretty cool clips from the TV show Homeland that has a lot of the social engineering aspects in it. I think that show was from 2016, I think, to 18. And they're using manual people. These days a lot of it's automated, right? Bots and things like that. But it's a really cool opportunity to share a lot of things. And then I might share a person of interest clip about social media and stuff, right? And then on the other side of it, I'll get into the final part, right? So what I offered about the prefrontal cortex stuff and all this stuff, and this Discordian sort of segment will be another variable ingredient into the setting up of all this, alright? So enjoy. I'll see you on the other side.
Well, there's two factors for the evolution. I'll just say it very quickly. Two factors. Number one, we are not victims of our health. 90-some% of ill health on this planet is now found to due totally to stress. It is not due to the biological malfunctioning. That in fact less than 5% of the population can even legitimately claim that their genetics are interfering with their life. So that means 95% of the people have a perfectly adequate genetic system, okay? We've been programmed to be victims, and the fact is, no, we are the ones that change the environment or perception of the environment. And since the environment that controls the cells, it doesn't make a difference if the cell's in a plastic dish or a skin-covered dish. It still responds to the environment.
Our mind creates the chemistry, which is the foundation of the culture medium called blood. Your thoughts release different chemicals into the blood, and just as I change the culture medium in one dish to another dish, I change the fate of the cells. As you change your mind and change your perception, you change your own biology and genetics, which means you're all powerful, but you don't believe it because there's nobody supportive. This becomes really critical, and the other part is this: we've all been programmed. And this is the hardship that we face, and there's a movie called The Matrix. You may have seen people look for it in the science fiction part of the video store. It's actually a documentary. and the reason is simply this: we have been given the choice of take the blue pill and go back into the program, or take the red pill and get out of the program. They never really said what would happen if you got out of the program, and all of us have been programmed last trimester of pregnancy, first 7 years, is download. And the reason for the download is this: you cannot be conscious if you don't have data. In other words, I buy you a new iPod, you take it out of the box, I say push play, play is to create the playlist, created, conscious, let's say. I say push play on the new iPod, and nothing happens. So, well, why not? And the answer is you didn't put any programs to play from. First 7 years, nature designed the download. The download is a brain state of theta as a predominant brain state, which is hypnosis, so that children observe everyone around them and download the behavior without conscious filtering or conscious interpretation. It's just a recording. What their fathers, their mothers, their family, culture is doing is a download. And these then become the foundation of the database. Now, the issue is the conscious mind is us, our spiritual, our source, who we are. We are in the conscious mind. There's an entity in there. That's us, okay? And the conscious mind is a creative mind. The conscious mind has wishes, desires, and aspirations. The subconscious mind is the habitual mind. It just plays the programs that we got. Well, the issue is, why don't our lives match our wishes and our desires? And science has answered that simply by the fact that it recognizes that we only operate 5% of the time from our conscious minds. That means 95% of your life is coming from the subconscious programs, which means the behaviors that you represent 95% of the time are actually not even yours. Fundamentally, they were downloaded from other people. And as a result, we're not living the lives that we want to live.
The spectacle, the drama, it was all about confrontation. Everything was a challenge.
The Justified Ancients of Mumu are the band everyone is talking about. But who on earth are they? Where did the Justified Ancients of Mumu come from?
The Justified Ancients of Mumu were one of the various warring imaginary cults that were mentioned in the Illuminatus trilogy. A fiction had infected Bill's consciousness and life.
Before Sweden, before Big in Japan, and before all these things, Bill had had his mind blown by a book called the Illuminatus trilogy. And this book was kind of like the sacred text of an underground 1960s religion called Discordianism. Discordianism goes back to a meeting between two friends in the 1950s in a bowling alley. This was Greg Hill and Kerry Thornley, and they used to meet to drink beer and try and work out why the world didn't make any sense.
And we were discussing philosophy, and we were talking about order and chaos. My theory was that order emerged from chaos. Greg's theory was that order was projected on the universe, that it didn't exist at all. And I said, well, what we need is not so much an explanation for order, but what the world needs is an explanation for chaos. At that point, we decided to start a religion, and thus Discordianism was born. I'm interested in finding some technique by which great masses of people can be broken out of their authoritarian conditioning all at once.
A lot of what the Discordians did was called Operation Mindfuck. They would write letters to magazines with completely ludicrous positions in.
There are the same number of letters in Lincoln as there are in Kennedy. and both were assassinated by men with middle names and replaced by Johnsons.
The idea was to spread so much chaos and confusion that nobody would know what on earth was true. And this was the tradition that Bill and Jimmy picked up on.
Well, we nicked a lot of stuff, obviously, from Illuminati. It was just there, waiting to be used.
They discovered Discordianism through the core text of that religion, which was the Illuminatus trilogy.
The Illuminatus books were a total send-up of sci-fi and conspiracy fiction. They weave their way through all kinds of surreal fantasies and conspiracies.
I, Markov Cheney, discovered another hidden joke in my name.
Ken Campbell, already a well-established author and director, started an outfit specifically to perform a freewheeling adaptation of the novels.
And Santana's troops losing all fear because they was high on Rosa Maria.
The plays were a great success, despite the fact that the first performance lasted 12 hours. I went along there to find out what the Illuminati are.
But there may be the people behind the scenes who are really running things. I mean, it would seem a bit unlikely that Nixon was running things exactly, you know what I mean?
By a strange coincidence, the stage manager of the Illuminatus production was a young Bill Drummond.
Bill thought it might be a good idea if he actually read the books that it was based upon. By the time he got to halfway through the first book, he'd already read enough. Ken Campbell sent him out for a tube of Araldite, and Bill never came back. He wanted to actually go out into the world and be this book.
Taking on the name Justified Ancients of Moo Moo meant they were taking on the name forces of chaos who were at war with the music industry. So that was right there at the start.
Last year, we realised the time had come in the history of pop music where anybody, well, we thought anyway, anybody could have a number one. We could just reach out and grab it. So we thought we'd have one.
We went into the studio on a Monday thinking we were going to make a house track, you know, regular underground dance house track using a bit of the Doctor Who theme tune. We realised it was in triplet time, and you can't have house tracks in triplet time. The only beat that we'd work with it was the glitter beat.
That track took itself over, really. It's like an out-of-control lorry.
Doctor Who, hey, the TARDIS, Doctor Who, hey.
And we just went for the lowest common denominator.
A couple of days into it, we realised how terrible it was.
By Tuesday evening, we realised we had a number one.
And we have a brand new number one on Top of the Pops this week. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's a car. Hear the Time Lords.
The current number one song on the pop charts this week is allegedly the brainchild of an American police car called Ford Time Lord.
He sits in the studio and tells us what he wants and we actually do it for him.
The song was all my idea and we made a great record.
My earliest memory was wanting to be on Top of the Pops. Then finally I was on. I was at number one. Best thing. It only lasted for a week, then it was all over. It just dissipated in front of us.
I think most people thought that it was just stupid records that everybody hated, which on one level it was, you know.
Doctor and the TARDIS had shown how easy it was to have a number one.
All you need to get to number one is this pile of junk. Get 3 bits of other songs and stick them together with a bit of sellotape.
So the next step was to lift the curtain and show everyone else how to do it.
Some of these crop circles were the work of an underground dance band, the KLF, who've pulled a string of bizarre media stunts which have had everyone scratching their heads.
The idea was to spread so much chaos and confusion that nobody would know what on earth was true.
So where did the idea come from?
Bill.
Big brooms.
Put a plank across the bottom of the burner, tape it all up, and the whole thing got completely out of hand in our heads. And when they asked us, well, did you do it? I had to say, well, I don't know.
KLF is gonna rock you.
So we never set out at all to be this global, international, multi-successful dance, pop, crossover, whatever it was. That was never part of the game plan.
KLF is gonna rock you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the KLF has now left the building.
So, what do we got?
Nothing much, unfortunately. The machine kicked out a number that has one of the smallest digital footprints I've ever seen.
No photos?
Not everyone in New York has a driver's license, Mr. Reese. First three digits of the social suggest that Jordan Hester was born in Georgia.
I'm supposed to recognize him by his accent?
Or her, I can't even verify the gender. Hester's living off the grid. No photos online and nothing on the social networking sites.
Never understood why people put all their information on those sites. Used to make our job a lot easier in the CIA.
Of course, that's why I created them.
You're telling me you invented online social networking, Finch?
The machine needed more information. People's social graph, their associations. The government have been trying to figure it out for years. Turns out most people were happy to volunteer it. Business wound up being quite profitable, too.
Does everyone in Northern Virginia have a security clearance?
Yeah, it comes with your Starbucks rewards card.
Figured I had this gig in the bag.
With all the people they're hiring, you probably do. Langley?
Sorry?
You Langley? You don't look like Fort Meade to me.
I've been at the Bureau last 4 years.
I was tailored access operations at Lackland. Dude, they kept us in a cage. Can't wait to get into the private sector. All that data they wouldn't let us touch. Can you believe the numbers they're throwing around here?
I know. They say anything strange to you?
We're a node on the parallel backbone, sitting on the biggest fiber optic cable transit in the world. 96.8% of the world's data, the great bit stream from which all else must arise, right fucking underneath us. Gives me an information throbber.
Group A applicants, follow me. Bring your paperwork.
Together.
What are you doing in here?
I'm looking for Carol. In accounting?
Well, she's obviously not here. Step into the hall, please. Step into the hall.
What's this?
According to cell phone records, it's where Conlon called you from, just before he was killed.
Looks deserted.
Yeah, I don't think so. All this, job listings. Each one leading back to this address. Some kind of startup. They're hiring like crazy.
Large-scale cluster management, Aurora, lamp stack.
Internet support, social media, that's what they're looking for.
You know this stuff?
Yeah, a lot of it. I applied for a job.
Max.
I know.
You just said Conlon died after going there.
I know, but this place is a black box. It makes sense for me to go in at least and find out what it's called. Unless you're not interested.
Of course I'm interested. I also just spent 90 minutes with a shrink reminding me how I put people in harm's way without thinking twice.
Well, I've already had a Skype interview with a recruiter. They want me to come in this afternoon.
Max!
It's not on you. It's on me.
Your parking pass is in the envelope, along with the parking rules, which are, let's say, complicated. Read them or you'll get towed. I'm not even kidding.
Okay.
How's your commute?
Not too bad.
If you stay at the resident suites, there's a corporate rate and a pool. A lot of people take advantage.
Oh.
If you get lost, you're level 6, area 3.
What's OPC?
No one seems to know. So this is you. All good?
Yeah, I guess.
That him?
Max Trent, Trent Max. Let me know if you need anything.
O'Keefe said you're the man.
Depends on what you mean.
Well, my network shit the bed. 22,000 sock puppets gone just when we've got a big I.O. push coming. That sound like something you can handle?
Show me. Okay. So I'm seeing Facebook accounts, Instagram, Twitter.
4chan, 8chan, fucking LinkedIn, whatever, we're there.
And this interface masks your identity.
Did until it stopped working. Didn't O'Keefe tell you anything?
Not really, no. All right, look. So these sock puppets you're missing, they're just a bunch of fake users with online lives that you manage, right?
I wouldn't say fake. What is it?
Just a second.
What is it?
Just wait. Okay, so the system here uses dynamic proxies to mask your location. There's a conflict with the firewall. I put in a workaround, so... do any of these ring a bell? Semper Fucked?
Right.
Iraq Bob.
That's me.
Navy Wife.
That's me too.
Delta Force Groupie.
Yo.
So we're back in business?
You tell me.
Vacation's over. You'll find a new set of talking points in your folders. Get outraged. Let's go. Let's go.
welcome back. I hope you enjoyed all them. Pretty cool, hey? Gave me just another excuse to put in some KLF stuff. That goes back to the early 90s. They were pretty big, alright? Might seem like weird music now, but it was so epic, and there's a really epic KLF documentary because they did that as a prank, alright? And they never expected success, alright? But yeah, it's pretty cool about the Discordianism, hey, right? And then all the social engineering and all the stuff going on, right? And I meant to talk about human nature and stuff, and what I was getting into the intelligence of people and stuff, and we might have a judgmental aspect about people out there, right? A lot of the failings of society of setting us up for failure have been projected on the individual, and we blame the individual, but it's people have been given the wrong information to set them up for failure, alright? But what I appreciate about vast majority of people, you know, if you give them the truth, most people make good decisions, right? That's the whole context thing, right? So maybe I'll show you the context with all this in parallel. I just want to move on and talk about this and get this done quick, right? But that's where I love providing people with the information to make decisions and self-actualize their own thing. It's not about getting people to follow me or anything like that. This is all about being self-sufficient and self-masterful. That's what I'm all about with the GSF, Galactic Special Forces. You're on your game, ready to go at any moment. Like every breath is grid work, right? If you're on your game in any moment, then you're a grid worker on Earth, sort of thing. Going back to the Echoes 14 sort of stuff, right? That we don't need codes, we don't need layers and stuff. This is where my philosophy of the Energy Hygiene Foundation, to clear out all the gunk, the byproduct is our mastery, right? It's only those with vested interests in us not being that are employing those sort of techniques of putting layers on the grid and codes and symbols and stuff on people and that, right? So this is sort of getting to the end. I don't know how long this is. I've offered a lot of clips and I've talked a lot and stuff. It's probably going to be another big one, but this, like I said, this weekend is a pretty monumental one, and it's a very rich opportunity to really do an assessment on yourself and see where you are, but then also employ a lot of the ingredients that are affecting us all. Very unusual at the scale right now, to then employ it, right, in the trenches, and to do like your own intuitive trader in it. And maybe you fail and fall, but then you are able to reassess and see where you truly are, and then learn and integrate it to move to the next level, right? So what I'm wanting to do is offer a big Michael Desarian clip. I think it's about 25 minutes. And so last few months I revisited some of his older stuff, and like I say, I really love going back to the older content, the conscious Tetris of where I'm at and of our evolving to hear things that we previously weren't able to hear. And he got into a lot of mythos stuff back in 2000, 2010 and stuff like that. And yeah, a lot of you guys that have been around a while, you know how awesome he is and stuff, and how on it he was. And you know, with the context of everything now, like the pure source and all that, sure, he might not be 100%, but just remember, most of these things are almost 20 years old, right? How epic he was, right? And that's where I really question the community of how much we've been derailed, because in this particular clip he offers a lot of cool things like the New Age and all this sort of stuff. But what he gets into this is about the cultural conditioning and the directions that an individual might go in the culture and based on the conditioning that we've had. And one of the big ones is the setup for failure, for looking for the big daddy, the Adamus sort of thing, and it gets into the political sort of stuff. So he goes over the politics from 2000 on and stuff. And in our Intuitive Potential Part 5, the last release I did earlier this weekend, I get into sort of the Obama era and stuff and comparing it to now. And that the really awesome thing about this teaching is it sort of might be a cool ingredient in your pattern recognition of seeing what is playing out right now and why my BS meter is off the charts. And you know, the menu is unique. The mainstream have been the enemy and the new genre is popping up, but it doesn't mean, from my perspective, it's clear at all. I think, you know, like if you get away from your wants of wanting relief and a big daddy to sort of come in and save us, I would offer that this video will help you see the nature of our culture and the conditioned human in it. It's not to be judgmental or anything, but then if you see it, then you can negate it in yourself and be, you know, an intuitive, pure source potential variable in it, alright? And I'll just show you the other image. But before I do, just really appreciate this, alright? Because it is really epic, okay? We should be asking, why didn't we get this? Why has no one ever been able to provide us with something like this? Putting all these ingredients together like this that make it so simple of seeing what the F has been going on, right? So I'll just go to the other image now. I feel this video will be a real cool ally to seeing why this is our potential only way, alright? It's a way. Everyone's menu is unique, but the outcome is common. You might go through unique variables and all this sort of stuff and ups and downs, but the outcome in the development is that crossover is not following the patterns that we've followed many times before, like this time is different sort of thing. I don't know what the outcomes are going to be, but I feel we're vastly more empowered with the truth and the context to then be an ally to navigation through our awareness journey, alright? So what I'm going to do is leave you with this epic clip that I'm finally going to get to, alright? I hope you get a lot from it, and I'll just round it out at the end, okay? Enjoy.
And as Carl Jung said in a well-known statement, he said, when an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside of you as fate. Ha, ha, ha. Because there's a strange contract between the unconscious energy of our minds and the world, the energy that built the world. They conspire together. They're built out of the same stuff. So behind the back of the ego, the unconscious mind, the shadow, conspires with life, with material existence, to bring in front of you the very people, the very person, the very challenges, right? To help you integrate when you won't do it of your own free will. And we call that living. All the stuff that happens around us that we often describe as difficult challenges, that's what that is. We will refuse to do the homework, so then we're going to meet it in space and time. As the Greek said, your character is your fate. Now the next statement from Carl Jung is the one that is basically the theme of the entire presentation. Very important statement, and it is the crux of all of the work that I do, and all of the work that I will continue to do in this field. This is it, because I am not a person who will leave consciousness at the door. I am fully aware of all of the other obscenities that are taking place, you know, in the name of God, in the name of religion, in the name of freedom and sovereignty. But you see, in my book, I will not leave consciousness at the door. And this is the reason. Carl Jung says that the gigantic catastrophes that threaten us today are not elemental happenings of a physical or biological order, but are psychic events. To a quite terrifying degree, we are threatened by wars and revolutions, which are nothing other than psychic epidemics. At any moment, several millions of human beings may be smitten with a new madness. And then we shall have another world war, or devastating revolution. Instead of being at the mercy of wild beasts, earthquakes, landslides, and inundations, modern man is battered by the elemental forces of his own psyche. It's just that the other stuff, you know, the symptoms of this, you can take a Polaroid of it. You can catch it on film. And you can call physical police to handle it. But there is a far greater form of violence going on that we are still to educate ourselves in. And it just so happens that the most toxic and unworked people just happen to be in power. So we've just diagnosed them. They just happen to be the ones most infected by the epidemic. And they're walking loose and hoping that you'll catch it too. But they're not what we first think that they are. They're not just mad politicians, you know, whatever. These are people who have an epidemic. And they happen to always rule the societies because we let them. We permit it to happen. The masses of men and women in the Western world compulsively avoid true, authentic, and psychoanalytical investigations of their natures, even with help, particularly in regards to the so-called darker aspects of the personality, the shadow self, and so on. However, not dealing with the psyche at all proves systemically hazardous, so a compromise is required. So the ego is not stupid. It knows to continually be dumping without any integration will create total pathology. So it thinks, I'm going to get poisoned by all the stench coming from the back alley. And, we want the house to look good in the front for the neighbors, but this stench is, creeping in. People going, is there something rotting around here? So it has to find a way of coming, doing some dumping, so to speak. So a compensation had to be found. And hence the proliferation of the New Age philosophy and movement, together with its many permutations. Riddled with ego-customized shams and gimmicks, the application of its methods serve, for the most part, to merely bolster the failing ego and its drives. You create inauthentic versions of cleansing, but might do a little topical spring cleaning without going too deep. It's called religion, or New Age movement. Western man has made himself bereft of the rites and rituals, the rites of passage, the shamanic methods for dealing with the build-up of his dark psychic content. As a result, he is patently psychologically arrested. His avoidance condemns mankind and the earth. It engenders psychotic and sadistic leaders who are able to play upon his fears and lower instincts ad infinitum. So we're getting to the core of it now. If we do not autonomously cleanse our psyches and strive to live morally, and if we continue to violate the natural order, remember I said nature goes through these cycles, it can handle the winter when everything dies and putrefies, because it knows what beautiful roses are going to come from that. Nature can do it, but we can't. And if we continue to violate the natural order because of our inner emotional and psychological toxicity, we will allow the ego to manifest surrogate channels to exorcise its repressions and other negative debris. In short, if we give up the right rulership of the self, we inevitably breed Orwellian political and religious tyrants to take over the job and turn us into what George Simmel, the psychologist, sociologist, said, smiling depressives, or worse. And there's two other proclivities, capacities that we have in our minds. In our ego consciousness, we also have two very important things. And again, both necessary, but we've taken them to extremes. And they're called projection and inflation. And the place where we can really examine them is in our relationships. The dark aspects of the personal psyche, which threaten the ego's autonomy and its vision of itself, are repressed, as we said. The shadow is the sum of all that we loathe about ourselves, and we project it onto other people and say they're responsible. This content is subconsciously projected onto others who become our external representatives of our personal shadow selves. In extreme cases, we also project this content through the field of other oblivious victims. That's an important one, but we're not going to get into it now. I'm working on a DVD and a website called Psychic Vampirism. You can go to psychicvampirism.com, and I've got something that's coming out that's going to be monumental on that, but we certainly can't visit that today. And additionally, there is the collective psyche and its dark content, which is at certain times likewise projected. So you do it with your individual mind, but we all do it collectively at certain phases in history. We literally all project on the famous nemesis that's created for us. And the politicians, they know how to manipulate that. We want the easy way out, and they have the pulse on the psyche, and they know how to help us with that kind of false exorcism. They're experts at it. I've always maintained in my work that if you don't know the motives of your enemy, then don't go into fight. You may know your motives, but if you don't know what makes them tick, we have zero knowledge of them. I've said it in the book, and I've said it in many talks. They have incredible knowledge of us. We don't even know what makes them tick. It's time to start finding out. That's like arming up to go and fight, find a tiger to shoot, but you don't have a faintest idea. In your mind, the tiger is a pink animal that flies in the sky. You don't know it's a thing with, inch-long razor-sharp teeth that's going to tear you limb from limb and can smell you coming 10 miles away. What good is it then you fighting the tiger? You're dead and buried and eaten is what's going to happen to you. Which is what has been happening to the brothers and sisters who've been trying to stand up against these leviathans, unfortunately. As I said, when we are not integrated, strong, and healthy psychologically, we invariably turn to external representatives. The parents, the politicians, the teachers, the evangelists, the heroes, the authority figures, the establishment representatives, whoever. And all manner of horrors have arisen because we do this. So yes, our world is full of horror and genocide and mayhem. Let's start discovering why. The approach of Pluto now will arouse fear, paranoia, and the whole cocktail of these darker emotions. That's why we're having this talk. It's because, you see, we're not going to get away with it any more. Very soon now, it's already actually been happening, but get ready for it. Now, these effects can confuse you. They can confuse and threaten both protagonist and antagonist. See, you may not be a generator or even a creator of dark, toxic energy too much, right? But you certainly will be the receiver of it from those who are. So you're going to have to know about what's coming, because if you don't, and the masks start coming down, and this toxicity starts coming out in people around you that you think you love, or that they've been fooling you into thinking that they love you, let's put it that way, you're going to be very shocked, and as a result, might do something very off or wrong, or you can be destabilized. And I don't want that to happen. I believe that the good people should have good times ahead. Shouldn't be again having to start from scratch again. Well, we can help that happen by having some knowledge about what might be coming down tomorrow, so that you're not completely shattered. Subsequently, the individuals will feel deeply insecure, and as a result tend to cleave even more vehemently to the known and familiar Saturnian archetypes. And the one I'm most concerned with and thinking about the most is known as the animus, which is a Latin word for the father, or more colloquially, Big Daddy. Very important archetype that make up ego consciousness. And very, very prevalent in the world. Big Daddy is what it's known as. And it has the most important effect. As we understand what our egos are doing, we'll understand why we create. Now, of course, we know that what is Big Daddy? It's nothing more than a re-scripting of the old Jehovah. I mean, this is an old deal we're talking about here. Now, look at the relationship of Jehovah to the so-called chosen people. It wasn't because they, wove the great tapestries, or they made the best sandals, or that they built great empires, or made great jewelry, or great lovers of women, or whatever. What was the reason why Jehovah was protecting, loving, and adoring the chosen people? One word. They were obedient. The relationship between the Father and the Son, you see, is one of obedience. That's what gets you the power and security that the Father offers you. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. The Bible is telling you about the animus. The Bible is telling you what God and this Father figure is. It's belligerent. Remember, you're going to it because you want protection, because you have no security inside yourself. And it's going to do its number. It's going to do its dance. Don't blame it. It's doing what it was paid to do. Paid with psychological energy. There's one other important psychological complex that we need to look at, and that's called identification. And we all do it. You have to identify with your heroes and things, otherwise, you couldn't survive. Identification is that you identify with your parents and the good side of, your heroes and so on and so forth. So it's a natural, healthy drive. But again, it's taken to extremes in certain situations. The extreme of it is known as the identification with the object of one's hate. The identification with the object of one's hate? Meaning you hate something, but you identify with it? Why would you do that? Now, when states and people are unhealthy and not sovereign, they give their power away to demagogues and champions who possess the ability to lead them anywhere. The slave has an ambivalent relationship with the master. He may despise the master, but he may also envy him and need his attention and affection, because we do need. We are in dependence. You are a slave of the approval and the needs of others, and if you don't have it, look what happens to you. Now, the slave has an inferiority complex and does not think or act for himself. In fact, he prefers that others do the thinking for him. In return for this, he offers service, work, and above all, obedience. It's the master versus slave. Now, see, of course, hate is in the eyes of both. The whole relationship is based on hate. But the slave is thinking, well, this guy can kill me. So, instead of death, slavery, death, slavery, death. All right, done deal, slavery. Just give me a few cushions every time, once in a while for my prison cell. And a little salt on my bowl of gruel, and I'm happy. Give me chains of iron instead of gold, and hey, brother, go and do whatever you want. Go and murder and mutilate in my name. I don't care. I'm happy. Glenn Parton said, we have internalized our masters, which is a well-known psychological response to trauma. Ah, see, trauma again. When faced with the overwhelming terror, ha ha ha. Haven't we heard that word recently? Quite a lot. The human mind splits, with part of itself modeling itself after the oppressor. It is an act of appeasement. Look, you're saying, I'm like you, so don't harm me. Simply called identification. A New York Times CBS poll noted that only 6% opposed military action, while a substantial majority favored war, even if many thousands of innocent civilians are killed. Simultaneously, Bush's approval rating has soared. Like all tyrants and demagogues, Adolf Hitler didn't force himself into power, he was voted in. Identification with the object of one's hate. Here's a couple of extreme examples of it, because this thing takes many forms. A female, in fact, identification complex is very much in the female, is an aspect of the female psyche. Here's two extreme examples of it to make the point. Say, for instance, you have a very ambivalent relationship with the father because the father, and rightly so, the father has in fact wounded you at some point in your youth. And you have a primal wound created by the father left, the father hurt you, whatever. It happens. You hate the father immensely for the wrong that he did, and you should. That hate is perfectly legitimate. But if you hate the father too much, it will often prevent a woman from integrating in society. Because the father is also the boss, you see, the senior, the state, the system. So your hate for your father prevents you from winning in the world. So then the ego now has to think, well, how do I make a compensation? So what the female psyche often does is it identifies with the object of its hate. And here's a couple of examples of it. And this is physicalizing it, where it's a woman, but it's not really a woman, it's a man. It's a person saying, I want to be male. Because I'm in deep hatred of my father, haven't worked it out, I'm not resolving it, don't know how. But I need the attention. I need to make it in the system. And if I'm in rebellious against the Saturnian system, I'm getting nowhere. And I have a healthy drive that wants to succeed and get somewhere and have a good life. So you're in what's known as a catch-22 situation. And you resolve it in these ways that are known as sublimation. And they're extreme. It's through sublimation. And we all do this to a certain extent. You think you don't have something, or you think that you're without something, and then you find a substitute for it. This is a very powerful archetype, this identification. But there's another version of the same thing. Only we know it as rebellion. It's the opposite side of the coin. It's like, hey, I'm not playing into all of that. I hate the father and the system and all that bogus stuff. Going to school, getting up in the morning, going and getting a job, all that straight up and down square stuff. You're in hatred of it, but you're not going to identify with it. You're going to say, hey, I rebel against it. Now, you can argue which is the healthier drive. I don't know. And then you had a whole culture of it here in the 60s. But see, what is rebellion really? Isn't it really the other side of the coin of the subservience? In Rome, no one complained when Caligula made his horse the emperor. That's the identification, right, with the object of one's hate. Go ahead and do whatever you want. The rebel goes, to hell with that. I will say something. But do you see that the rebellion is still isn't it dependent on the discipline, on the father? It's still tied to the actions of the father. The rebel is a healthy in a way because he's seeing the dumbed downness. He's seeing the utter control and the gaga people. They're acting like sheeple. So the rebel tries to, in his own way, as dysfunctional as it is, he's trying to say, but I don't buy into all of that. I see it as a lie. And how can you not see it as a lie? We've got a one-party system happening here. We've got blustering maniacs who are going to push it down everybody's throat with lie upon lie upon lie. Because you see, look, they say, look, you want to live in a box where you can hear the toilet flushing next door and with some slumlord, we can accommodate you. You want to pay through the nose for a useless car, we can accommodate you. You want to go ahead and live in a dead-end, get yourself a dead-end job in which you're stuck in scale labor for the rest of your life, the system can absolutely accommodate you. You want to buy into a false lie and believe a lie after lie after lie to cover the other lies, we absolutely can accommodate you. You want to live in a world where you have a political system of tyrants where you can vote for them to go and mass murder, we can accommodate you. But if you want to live in a world where you're independent and you have a healthy system, we can't accommodate you. That's the message. So the rebel goes, then I'm out of here. I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. You see, so it's semi-healthy. You get a medal for knowing what you don't want to do. You know, as a tarot reader or as a diviner, you know, as an astrologer, I can tell you that most of my clients, and I'm sure this will be corroborated by anyone else who works in this field, I'm visited by so many people who absolutely have got to that point in their life where they do not know what it is that they do know what they don't want to do. Their problem is what it is that they have to do or should be doing, their destiny. Because there's all the difference in the world between that, you know, knowing what you don't want to do, and you get a medal for that. That's great. A lot of people never even get to that stage. But the secret of life, the magic of life, is that we often don't know what it is that we want to do, and then we make the mistake of turning to authority figures to go, they're going to tell me. The trick is that only you know what it is you want. That's the whole point. And until you create it for yourself, it's not going to be there. You can model yourself on others perhaps a little bit, you know, and browse the field, but only you can begin the process of lighting the fuse of what you need to be. Sam Peckinpah created himself. Van Gogh, Michelangelo, the whole list. You create yourself. But you know, they've put so many bread and circuses in front of us that we are gaga. We don't even know what's happening. Think for ourselves, we can't even get that far. They're doing the thinking for us, and they can hand us whatever they want. They can even create a faux conflict and say, look, we know you're unhappy. We know you're repressed. We know you hate our guts. But you know what? We'll give you a way to do something about it. We'll create a political system, a pigsty, in which you can go in there and cluck and chip at each other, you know, like those cockerel fights. That's what you need to do. You need to go and do that. And that'll bring us down. So they create a fake game of dialectics for us, and then we exhaust all our energy in this political pigsty created by our masters, and then wonder why nothing moves a smegging inch forward. And they're laughing, they're having a field day, they're dancing on their desk going, these chumps bought into this? Yeah, well, that's right, our forefathers only lived about 25 years of age. We've got a lot of growing to do. So that, you know, the rebellion is healthy in a way, but never forget it is merely the other side of the coin of the problem. It's saying, I don't want to, you know, be part of the problem anymore. But yet, as you saw in the 1960s, and as you still see, there's not too much solution stuff happening. They've got so far to realize it's a horrific, deathly system that's going on. And I mean, the symbolism of these people is already telling you who they and what they are. Because really, nothing's been hidden. Even the colors, the red and the blue, are the degrees of Freemasonry. I mean, as we know, I hope everyone in this room knows that this is a one-party creature. And I showed Michael Moore's picture earlier because, you see, he is a great exemplar, and there's plenty of them, of this faux opposition. The game is like this. If you don't create your own rival, you might have to come up against one that really does mean business. You don't want that. You don't want the real fighters. You don't want those who are going to come and try and take down your system, of which there's been a few people like that in history. So you invent and fund and pay and clothe your own guy. Case in point. Michael Moore was interviewed during the summer of 2004 and asked repeatedly by Charlie Rose what the real reasons, this is after Fahrenheit 9/11, it's all done and, you know, millions of dollars have been thrown around. What was the real reasons for Bush's alarming aggressive tactics and why so many liberties and rights were being flagrantly disregarded? Moore answered back in the same manner every time he was asked the same question, and I believe he was asked about half a dozen times. And his answer was, I don't know. Immediately, I knew that he works for them. You don't know? Excuse me, you've just thrown millions of dollars around. You've given a 70% fact because we are angry. So we'll follow this guy thinking he's got a piece of the truth. And just like they show you in The Meaning of Life, Monty Python, come with me, come. The waiter is leading, remember? And they end up nowhere. Aren't they the false gurus? Come. I'm going to show you where I live. I got a mystery I'm going to show you. Leads them through all the streets and up and down and all around. And then what? To an empty bloody field. I don't know. Well, that is not good enough. For you to be on primetime television with all of that time? Guess what? Alex Jones knows. Anthony Hilder could find out. Jordan Maxwell managed it. The people of America are managing it, but you can't find out? You have nothing to say? Meaning you know the problem, but you don't know what it is? Brilliant. I say to hell with that. It's in our face what is wrong. What is wrong is it's a one-party system. And this dialectic, we need to become very familiar with how it's worked, because behind the scenes it's just one guy. It's like I discovered in Ireland, the Irish Republican Army. Yeah, they had to change their name to the Irish Republican Army because they were originally called the Irish Republican Brotherhood, which is a very different meaning. That's Freemasonic. I start finding out that the little dove of Sinn Féin is the dove of the Knights of Malta and the Knights of Cologne. I start finding out that the green ribbon that Sinn Féin and Jerry Adams guy wears, like it looks like the AIDS ribbon. Oh my goodness, that goes to a group called the Green Ribbon Lodge. Green Ribbon Lodge? Which is an outgrowth of the ancient order of Hibernians? What are we talking about? First it was armies and revolution, and now it's secret societies. Who's this orange on one side and the green on the other and the white in the middle? Ah, nobody talks about the white. Who are the white pure ones that control both sides of that conflict? I started to have questions. Well, you can create Judaism in opposition to Christianity by the same hand. You can, by the same hand, create Catholicism and then create its opposition, Protestantism. You can create communism and say it's opposed to capitalism. You can create Democrats and then say they're opposed to the Republicans. And I ask you this then, is the enemy really the problem? All generals know that the enemy is not your problem. The problem is the ones that are meant to be marching with you who haven't the faintest idea what's going on. Or they're fearful and undereducated about the fight. When a warrior is going to battle, if he sees fear and ambivalence in the eyes of his comrades, he knows that you're good as dead. Remember Braveheart? In this fight, that's what the problem is. It's the members of our own contingent who are out to lunch, who haven't got clear on what's happening, who are undereducated, misinformed, or fearful. Mikhail Bakunin, one of my great heroes, the father of anarchism, who rotted in Tsarist jails until his teeth rotted out, 18 years chained to a wall in pitch darkness. This is only one of the imprisonments that this man had to go through. And when he came out, within 5 minutes, he's again writing on humanity and down with these tyrants. No, all his life long, would never stop fighting autocracy. Yet, this man from his own words says, I'll take 1,000 Tsars over one Karl Marx. That's informed. Yet, isn't Karl Marx meant to be a socialist on the same side as Bakunin? We're all one. Down with the king, down with the Tsar. Bakunin says, no, down with you. I know you who you are. He said, a herd of animals organized by compulsion and force and concerned only with material interests, ignoring the spiritual side of life. At his own time, that's what he said the revolutionaries are. And of course, don't we know that the hand that crushes the tyrant's head becomes a tyrant in his stead? The enemy is not your problem. And that's a big theme. Never forget that. The enemy, in fact, you know something? The enemy that we so-called think is so awful and terrible, we've been taken out years ago. They're very weak. That's why they're called a hidden elite. Of course they're hidden. They know if we knew about them, we would destroy them in 5 minutes. When America finally wakes up, it'll be like Gulliver. You remember Gulliver was held down by all those little people? Well, when Gulliver finally wakes up, he'll be able to dust these George Bushes off their shoulders and throw them into the ocean. Because these individuals themselves are not spiritually pure and clean and cannot rise up high to feel high. So their mentality is to push and artificially repress good people so they feel great. They're not actually doing anything to spiritually progress or mature, but they are doing a lot to hold you down, and that's how they get their feeling of greatness. The petty tyrant in your neighborhood does the same thing. The bully in school does the same thing.
Hey, welcome back. Thank you for being here. So I hope you got a lot from this, alright? It's a very cool clip, hey. Well done if you made it through to now. And especially thank you for investing in all of this material if you've been pretty hardcore and explored part 5 before getting to this part 6. Very interesting, hey, putting all this together. I hope you gained a lot from these, alright? I feel like I was really nailing it, okay? And that's where I was saying I was a bit anti-Dufresne, double bratty, alright? Because I really got this, alright? And I really hope you're empowered to a whole new level. It's been a really testing time this last era, okay? Time has really gotten away, but I hope if I've been an ally over the last 4 years, alright? If you do an assessment of where you were then versus now, okay? It's been a massive 4 years for me, alright? It's an interesting you know, opportunity to really doing a self-assessment and stuff like that. I know just 6 months ago, I've working out the pure source sort of stuff and 22D and all that, never had all that stuff, right? So where we are now, where I am now, I'm parabolic to where I was, and I feel very confident and really getting that pranic healing of pure source itself the other week, right? Which, as I said in the last release, I offered part of it before this weekend, and I'll look to offer that full version in a future release on the other side of this big societal event, because it might be a really cool tool for you to measure yourself of what you felt and experienced in that one, but then being clear on the other side, right? But we've all endured so much, right? And we all might have felt like we're overextended and given up and done and just going to settle for whatever stuff we get, right? But I would offer, just take a step back, do a self-appreciation of all of this stuff. Maybe you're overextended because you pushed so freaking hard and you are so badass and you've left no, you know, you're totally spent from the marathon that it's been, and out of that you've just plowed ahead in your awareness. You're off on another parabolic, you know, you're so peerless compared to so many, because say you've included me in your journey and stuff like that and done so much, right? And maybe it just hasn't solidified and it's not revealing itself because of, like I said, the prefrontal cortex and the layers of the Chaos 19 and all the other ingredients in the spell and the fog that we've been in. It makes it very hard to be able to self-assess. But I really hope I'm accurate. But I think I'm pretty on the ball, because it is pretty obvious and stuff. And I really hope humanity gets a lot of benefit from this. Humanity deserves it. We're an amazing species and on this incredible planet, and we deserve a lot better. And those of you that have been along this journey with me and really, you know, pushed hard with my stuff and anchored us, like I said in GSF 32 earlier in the year, a lot of you have actually helped forge this potential for us all as well by your dedication to your self-mastery. And you may have been beaten up and got a few scars and had a few hard hits and stuff, but you're still here, right? So I feel there is an incredible volume of potential for us all. And yeah, so see how you go. I hope this all really empowers you. I hope you have an awesome week, alright? And we'll see what plays out, alright? But thank you as always for being here. I honor and appreciate you for all that you've had to endure and allowing me to be a part of your journey. I hope this is another epic addition to your expansion of your awareness into your intuitive potential. And let's see where we go, guys. Thank you. Lots of love. And the brat from down under out once more. Alright? Take care. Bye for now.
The sun is gonna keep on shining right ahead on the horizon. My love for you always keep on rising. Everything's gonna be alright tonight. Oh yeah, my love for you is gonna keep on rising. The sun's gonna keep on shining right next to the horizon. My love for you will keep on rising. Everything's gonna be alright. The November, heading for the city lights. 975, we're sharing each other, nearer than farther. Scent of lemon drips from your eyes. We are the people that rule the world, fostering in every boy and girl, all rejoicing in the world. Take me now. We can drive a little adventure, love in summer. Follow the sun tonight, reminiscing of the times of life. For each every other, the feeling stronger. Shock at 11, got lost in your eyes. Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can you remember in human eyes? It was to where we'd energize, lie in the sand and visualize like it's 75 again. We are the people that rule the world, fostering in every boy and girl, all rejoicing in the world. Take me now. We can drive. Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Everything about you, know everything about me, know everything about us. I know everything about you, know everything about me, know everything about us. Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now?
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.